So I want to talk you through a real client situation because I think this situation really highlights something a lot of women experience, but don't always have it explained to them properly. So this particular client we worked with on and off for a couple of years. She's in her mid 40s. She's very consistent. She trains regularly. She eats well. She gets her steps in and she sleeps reasonably well. So all the things that you'd expect. And earlier on in her program, we actually had some good progress. Her body composition improved, measurements came down, and she felt pretty strong and pretty super confident. But towards the end of last year, things started to plateau a little bit. Progress didn't stop completely, but it became pretty slow and pretty temperamental. And while we wanted to push, any attempt to drop calories lower didn't really lead to fat loss. It actually led to the reverse. It led to bloating, water retention, and inflammation. And the scale became inconsistent and the waist measurement wasn't really responding the way it had earlier on. And I want to state this was definitely not due to a lack of consistency or a lack of effort. You have to understand that in training and progress, plateaus do happen. It's very normal, but they shouldn't last long. And at some point you need clarity on whether you are generally stuck and why. So when we reached that point with this client, guessing didn't really make sense. And plus, we never guess. We are driven by data. So rather than pushing harder or making random changes, we looked into her blood work. And we also compared it to a Dutch test that she'd done before she started with us. And the goal here isn't to try and find something wrong. It was just to understand why her body was no longer responding to the same inputs. What the testing showed was actually pretty common at this stage of life. It's nothing dangerous and nothing pathological, but it did show a pretty clear pattern. Very low progesterone, estrogen still relatively dominant, low to normal androgens, and thyroid function technically was in range, but it was definitely not optimal for fat loss. And it just showed a stress system that looked more flattened than overstimulated. So in simple terms, her body had become protective rather than responsive to the usual inputs. And this is where a lot of people make the mistake. They see their progress slow and assume they need to eat less and train more and be super strict. But at this stage, that usually makes things worse, not better. So rather than pushing harder, we actually adjusted our approach and moved into the next phase, where the goal was to reduce stress on the system and re-establish fat loss. So this phase was not about aggressive fat loss at all. It was all about resensitizing her system. We flattened calories instead of cycling them. We controlled training volume, capped additional cardio, we simplified supplements, and we shifted the main progress markers away from the scale and onto waist measurements, recovery, and how her body was responding day to day. The idea behind this is very simple. If the body is stressed or hormonally suppressed, it won't let go of fat loss reliably, no matter how disciplined you are. So basically, this phase was all about removing the handbrake first. And we're also having sensible and measured conversations around hormonal support, particularly progesterone, because in some cases, lifestyle alone stops being enough to drive reliable change. And the right support can help the body respond more normally again. And the reason why I wanted to share this client's journey is because a lot of women quietly blame themselves when their body stops responding the way it used to. And in many cases, a lot of cases, it's not about effort anymore. It's about physiology changing and adjusting your strategy accordingly. Fat loss over 40 is definitely not impossible, but it does require better sequencing, better assessment, and a more calmer approach. And when you do that properly, results will start to move again, without fighting your body the whole way. So if this sounds familiar, it's worth stepping back and looking at the bigger picture rather than pushing harder, because that is often where the real answers are. But appreciate you watching. Thank you. You're welcome. See you on the next one. And if this one hits home, ladies, make sure you subscribe. Make sure you give me a follow. Find me on social media, TB Conditioning, and you're welcome.